In the quiet hours of the night, the line between routine and reckoning often blurs. For Sarah Martinez, a double shift at Joe's Diner was just another step toward her dream of nursing school. But at 11:45 p.m., the empty streets of the city held a tension she couldn't yet name. The fluorescent hum of the diner was the only sound in the stillness. Sarah wiped down the last table, her body aching from the long hours. Every penny saved was a brick in the foundation of her future. Then, the bell chimed. Derek, Mike, and Jason, regulars who carried trouble like a shadow. Tonight, they weren't just looking for a meal. "Kitchen's closed," she told them, but Derek's smile held no warmth. He wanted coffee, and he wanted her attention. The diner felt suddenly too quiet. She poured the coffee, her mind cataloging the isolation. Joe was gone, her co-worker was gone, she was alone with men who didn't know the meaning of no. When she brought the cups, Derek reached out, a grip on the wrist, a test of boundaries. Sarah didn't flinch. She pulled back, her spine straightening. Jason moved to the door. The exit was sealed. The social contract was breaking, replaced by something older and more primal. She remembered her brother Marcus's voice. Never show fear. She looked Derek in the eye and gave him his last warning. Leave. Now. Derek laughed and reached again. This time, Sarah didn't pull back. She stepped forward, using leverage and joint mechanics to create distance. But it was 3 against 1. The odds were calculated and cruel. Mike came from the left. Jason held the door. The hunt was on. Her fingers found the cold ceramic of a coffee mug. In her mind, she wasn't just a student anymore. She was a survivor calculating the physics of escape. She threw the mug, a distraction, not a finish. She darted for the kitchen, but Mike was faster. A brutal yank backward shattered her momentum. She fought with everything Marcus had taught her. An elbow to the ribs, a stomp to the foot. She almost broke free, almost made it to the door. Then Derek's hands were on her. The weight of 3 men against 1 woman. The air in the diner felt thin, replaced by the smell of sweat and fear. He lifted her and slammed her back. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. The world spun into a cacophony of ringing ears and sharp pain. She slid down the wall, the taste of blood in her mouth. The 3 of them stood over her, triumphant, cruel, and oblivious to the reckoning they had started. Sarah Martinez was down, but she wasn't defeated. In the darkness of Joe's Diner, a story of trauma began, but also a story of a rise from the ashes, because some people don't know who they're dealing with until it's too late.
Joe's Diner, 2 a.m., a moment of calculated intervention in the face of impossible odds. This is the case of Sarah Chen. Outnumbered and injured, Sarah was cornered until a stranger stepped through the door with the relaxed certainty of a professional. Commander James Chen, 20 years in the Navy, most of it with the SEALs. He didn't see a fight. He saw a series of solved problems. What followed took less than 3 seconds. A precise strike to the cervical spine. No wasted energy, just the termination of the threat. "I didn't attack anyone," James told them. "I intervened using reasonable force, and the security camera recorded everything. Checkmate." The police arrived to find a scene perfectly secured, a testament to preparation. "You're a fighter," James told her, and he would know. Informed courage, disciplined intelligence. Sometimes the right person is in the right place because they never stop training. This is the ground report.
The emergency room was busy even at 1 in the morning. Sarah sat on an examination table while a doctor checked for signs of serious head injury. Her head throbbed with a painful rhythm, her back a massive bruise where she'd hit the wall. "You're lucky," Dr. Patel said. "Mild concussion but no fractures." The doctor was firm. She needed 2 weeks of rest. Concussions are serious. Sarah thought of her mother 3 hours away and whispered that she could call someone. Alone with her thoughts, she replayed the moment Commander Chen walked through the door. 5 seconds later, and the outcome would have been far worse. A nurse interrupted her thoughts. Commander Chen was there. He brought a sandwich, a simple kindness that brought tears to her eyes. He wanted to check on her. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do that." James sat down. He wanted to make sure she was okay. Sarah realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since 6. She asked him about the SEALs. "The way you fought them, is that what they teach you?" James smiled slightly. "They teach you to assess situations and respond." "Those men weren't trained fighters," James explained. "They were bullies. But you had something too, Sarah. You fought back. Most people would have frozen. Sarah spoke of her brother, Marcus Martinez, a corporal in the Marines. He'd taught her never to give up. Fighting back, even when you might lose, is better than not fighting at all. The military is a good family, James said with respect. It teaches you to rely on others. Your brother would be proud of how you handled yourself tonight. Sergeant Davis entered. They needed a statement while it was fresh. James stood to leave, but Sarah pulled out her phone, her hand still shaking. "Can I have your number?" she asked. "I'd like to thank you properly." James smiled warmly. "I'll hold you to that. Rest up, Sarah. You're tougher than you think." The statement was recorded. The security footage backed her up completely. "We have them on video," Davis said. "Derek Thompson is looking at serious jail time." "Good," Sarah said, surprised by the venom in her own voice. "They deserve it." After the police left, she was moved to observation, lying in the dark. She thought about how close she had come to the abyss. She thought about Chen's competence, but mostly she thought about her own strength. She had survived. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. She was coming to take care of her. Sarah texted back that she was okay. She wasn't just okay, she was alive. She added James's number to her contacts, saving it under My Hero. It seemed appropriate. The fear was fading, replaced by a new kind of certainty. Sarah Martinez was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. This was the first chapter of her reckoning. And Commander Chen, he was just getting started. 3 days later, Sarah was resting at her apartment. She had been following doctor's orders, staying in bed and letting her mother fuss over her. The headaches were getting better, though she still felt tired and sore. The physical wounds were healing, but the memory remained sharp. Then, her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Sarah almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. It was Detective Raymond Moore from the District Attorney's Office. He was handling the case against Derek Thompson and his associates. Moore told her he'd reviewed the footage and her statement. He was going to prosecute these men to the fullest extent of the law. Thompson had the longest record. No plea deals were being offered. The district attorney wanted this to go to a full trial. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach when Moore told her she would have to testify. The thought of facing them again was sickening. Moore explained that her testimony was crucial. Hearing from the victim makes a massive impact on a jury's decision. She remembered what Commander Chen had said. She was a fighter. She took a deep breath and agreed to do it. Her mother came in with soup and saw the look on her face. Sarah explained the trial, and her mother hugged her tightly. Sarah's father had died when she was 12. He had always told her to stand up for herself. She wished he could see her now. He was a man who believed in strength and integrity. In this moment, Sarah reached for that legacy to find her own courage. Later that afternoon, Sarah decided to text Commander Chen. She was nervous, but she needed to talk to someone who understood. The response came quickly. Chen was also testifying. He asked how she was feeling, his tone steady and supportive. Sarah asked how he stayed so calm. Chen told her that fear is natural. In the SEALs, they learn to manage it, not eliminate it. When things go wrong, you fall back on your training. Chen told her that while she didn't have his training, she had something just as valuable. Courage isn't the absence of fear, he told her. It's doing what needs to be done despite being afraid. That's what she had shown. He invited her for coffee near the university. For the first time in days, Sarah smiled. She felt lighter, more manageable. The next morning, she took extra care getting ready. She wanted to look presentable, not like a victim. She chose a simple, strong look. The coffee shop was near campus, a place Sarah knew well. When she arrived, Chen was already there, waiting with 2 coffees. He told her she looked much better than the last time he saw her. They laughed, and the conversation turned to their dreams and futures. Sarah talked about her dreams of working in pediatrics. Chen told her kids need fighters like her, people who will advocate for them. Because that's what Sarah Martinez was, a fighter, and she was just getting started.
Over the next few weeks, Sarah and James developed an unlikely friendship. They met for coffee regularly, sharing quiet moments in a world that had suddenly become loud. Sometimes they were joined by Emily, James's daughter. She was 22, smart and funny, carrying her father's calm confidence in her eyes. "Dad talks about you all the time," Emily said. "He's impressed by how you're handling everything." Sarah felt a warmth she hadn't known in weeks. Emily spoke of the terrible thing that had happened, but also of the strength it took to refuse to be defined by it. It was a bridge of understanding. With James away, Emily leaned in. "Can I ask you something personal? Are you interested in my dad? Like, romantically?" Sarah nearly choked. "What? No, I mean, he's great, but..." The question left her seeing James not just as a hero, but as a man. Emily spoke of her mother's death 5 years ago. Since then, James had been alone, throwing himself into his work and his silence. When James returned, the conversation turned lighter, but Sarah found herself seeing him differently, a person with his own pain. A week before the trial, the DA's office brought Sarah in. It was time for the grueling process of trial prep with Catherine Walsh. "They're going to try to discredit you," Walsh explained. "They might suggest you led them on. You need to be prepared for it." They practiced for hours until Sarah could recite the events without faltering. The facts were her only shield against their attacks. On the drive home, James insisted on dinner. Over pad thai, Sarah voiced her deepest fears. What if she messed up on the stand? "Control what you can control," James told her. "You can't control the defense, but you can control your honesty and your preparation." He admitted he had been terrified when he testified years ago. Being scared didn't mean she was weak, it meant she was human. The night before the trial, sleep was impossible. Sarah tossed and turned, the scenarios playing like a broken film in her mind. At 2 a.m., a text from James appeared. His steady presence, even through a screen, helped calm her racing mind until exhaustion won out. The morning of the trial, James arrived in his dress uniform, an authoritative figure of justice. "You've got this," he whispered. The courtroom was smaller than she expected, but the air was heavy. Sarah sat with her hands twisting, waiting for her name to be called. She saw them, Derek, Mike, and Jason. Their expressions were hostile, but Sarah forced herself to look away, toward the witness stand. "Sarah Elena Martinez," she began. Her voice was steadier than she expected, a clear note of truth in a room full of noise. The security footage played in total silence. The brutal reality of the night filled the courtroom, leaving the jury visibly shaken. The defense tried to twist her words to suggest she had led them on, but Sarah remembered Walsh's advice. Stay calm, stick to the facts. She held firm, answering every question with the simple, unbreakable power of the truth. The reckoning had finally, truly begun.
After 45 minutes of cross-examination, the defense attorney finally sat down. Sarah was excused, her legs shaking as she walked back to her seat. James gave her a subtle thumbs up from where he sat. The first hurdle had been cleared, but the atmosphere remained heavy with the weight of the trial. Commander Chen was called next. He took the stand with military bearing, his uniform crisp and his posture perfect. The jury sat up straighter, sensing his authority. Catherine Walsh approached the stand. "Please state your name and occupation for the record." His voice was steady, a sharp contrast to the room's tension. "Commander James Michael Chen, United States Navy, retired." He spoke of 22 years of service, 18 of them as a Navy SEAL. Special operations, combat deployments. Sarah saw the jury members exchange glances. This was a man with serious credentials, and everyone in the room knew it. There was no room for doubt. He described the night with precision. "When I entered the diner, I immediately assessed the situation. 3 adult males surrounding 1 injured female. The threat was obvious." James's words were cold and clear. He was a professional describing a scene he had seen 1,000 times in 100 different ways. The prosecution played the footage. The jury watched as Derek charged at James, only to be quickly and efficiently taken down. Minimum force, maximum effect. Mike's attempt to attack from behind looked almost comedic in its failure against a man trained for life and death encounters. The outcome was never in doubt. The defense attorney tried to corner him. "Isn't it true that you're trained in lethal combat? Why should we believe you didn't use excessive force?" James's expression didn't change. If I had used excessive force, your client would have required extensive medical treatment. He walked out with minor bruises. I used precisely the amount of force needed to stop the assault and protect Miss Martinez. Nothing more. His authority was absolute. The room was silent. When asked if he misread the situation, James's eyes hardened. Counselor, I know the difference between a discussion and an assault. The footage confirms it all. The trial moved forward. Responding officers and paramedics testified, each piece of evidence reinforcing the brutal reality of what Sarah had endured. Then came the testimony that broke the defense. Derek's ex-girlfriend described his violent temper. He put me in the hospital twice. I knew I had to speak up. The video showed all three participating. The jury looked unconvinced by the attempts to paint them as regular guys who just made a mistake. They chose violence. A forensic psychologist laid out the clinical reality. Sarah showed classic symptoms of PTSD, nightmares, anxiety, and a hypervigilance that never sleeps. Simple things like walking to her car alone now made her heart race. She hadn't realized how much the attack had fundamentally changed her world. These men made a choice, Walsh told the jury. They chose violence over walking away. Now they must face the consequences. Justice demands it. Sarah deserves it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Sarah waited, unable to eat or drink. However it goes, you did great, James said, his voice a steady anchor. When the bailiff finally called them back, the silence was deafening. Sarah could hear her own heart beating against her ribs like a trapped bird. In the matter of the state versus Derek Thompson, we find the defendant guilty on all counts. Guilty for Mike and Jason, too. Justice was served. It's over, James said quietly. You won. The defendants were remanded into custody. The long shadow of the diner assault was finally beginning to recede. Derek faced over a decade. Mike and Jason, 5 to 7 years. As Sarah walked out of that courthouse, she knew the road was long, but she wasn't walking it alone.
After the trial, Sarah Martinez tried to return to normal life, but the shadows of trauma aren't easily outrun. The world looked the same, but she was different. She went back to work at the diner. Joe had fortified the place with cameras and security, but Sarah still jumped at every loud noise, every sudden movement. She started seeing Dr. Lisa Park, a trauma specialist. Sarah told her she just wanted to stop being afraid, to feel like herself again. A long road lay ahead. Dr. Park taught her about PTSD, that her fear was her brain's attempt to protect her. She learned to breathe, to ground herself when the panic rose. James was there, a steady, quiet force. He never pushed. And Emily, now a friend, helped Sarah rebuild the social life that had shattered during the trial. 3 weeks later, the sentencing. Sarah walked into that courtroom with a trembling hand, but a clear purpose. She had a statement to make. She looked Derek in the eyes. You tried to break me, she said. You thought I was weak, but you were wrong. I'm still here, and I will heal. The judge was firm. 15 years for Derek, 7 for the others. They would all register as violent offenders. The justice was finally cold and certain. Afterward, James spoke of fate, of how a simple choice to take a walk led him to that diner at the exact right moment. Sarah was just grateful he listened. James told her he spent time with her because he enjoyed her company, not out of obligation. For the first time, Sarah saw a future beyond the trauma. That night, she called Marcus. He was proud. He spoke of leaving the Marines to become a cop, to protect others like James had protected her. Sarah Martinez was no longer just a survivor. She was a fighter who had integrated the pain and emerged stronger. The case of the diner attack was closed.
Summer arrived with a deceptive warmth. Sarah threw herself into her studies, determined to earn her future in nursing, refusing any special treatment. The program was intense, but she found a sense of purpose in the clinical rotations. She wanted to help people, to ease the suffering she knew so well. Her supervisor noticed. You have the right combination of competence and compassion, she said. Sarah chose pediatrics without hesitation. She wanted to be an advocate for the vulnerable. Energized by the news, she texted James. His response was immediate, a celebratory dinner, a moment of connection in a life that had felt so isolated. Over pasta and wine, they talked about dreams for the future. James listened with that familiar, relaxed certainty. He knew the value of having someone in your corner, Sarah found herself laughing, genuinely enjoying the evening. But as they left the restaurant, the shadows of the parking lot triggered the old familiar anxiety. James noticed. Progress, not perfection, he reminded her. It was a tactical reminder of how far she had come. Then the air shifted. James confessed his feelings. Real feelings. He knew the age gap was a risk, but he couldn't hide his heart any longer. Sarah was stunned. "I have feelings for you too," she admitted. She'd been scared to acknowledge it, but he made her feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally safe. James told her her trauma didn't define her. They stood in that parking lot smiling like teenagers, finding light in the wreckage of their pasts. They decided to take it slow. No pressure. Their first date was a concert in the park, a picnic under the stars, a hard-won piece for both of them. Emily was thrilled. She'd seen it coming. "You're good for him, Sarah," she said. "He's been alone for too long." Sarah knew she was right. Over the next few months, they grew closer. Sarah learned about James's own scars, the 2 years he spent watching his wife Karen lose her battle with cancer. He spoke of the excruciating helplessness, the guilt of feeling relief when her pain ended. Sarah took his hand, offering the same grounding he had given her. "I met someone who reminded me that life is still worth living," James told her. It wasn't about the tragedy anymore. It was about the crossing of paths. Fall brought the final year of nursing school. The workload was intense, but James was there for every milestone, every hard-earned success. Dr. Park noticed the change. Sarah seemed lighter, happier. She was still dealing with the PTSD, but she was building a life that made her happy. "That's exactly what healing looks like," Dr. Park said. "It's about integrating your experience and becoming someone new, someone stronger." Sarah wasn't the same woman from the diner. She was different now, scarred but stronger, wounded but finally, undeniably, healing. From the ashes of that night, she was building something good, a future forged in informed courage, a life worth every risk. This was the reckoning. Not a return to the past, but an evolution into a future she had fought to earn. She would be the advocate they needed, the one who understood what it meant to have someone in your corner when the shadows grew long. Sarah Chen had risen, and the world was better for it. Stay disciplined. Stay kind. This has been the Mitchell Standard.
Winter arrived with the first snowfall, blanketing the city in a heavy white silence. It was a season of transition. Sarah was deep into final exams when James called. He had been asked to speak at a conference in San Diego. They flew out on a Friday. Sarah had never seen the Pacific. The scale of the water was mesmerizing. James's engagement was Saturday. He stood before a room of veterans, commanding it with a familiar, calm authority. He spoke of the void left by the uniform, the struggle to find purpose when the mission seems to have ended. He told them that service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. There are many ways to protect and help. Then he spoke of the night at the diner. He spoke of intervention and the bravery of a young woman who fought back. He told the crowd that heroism isn't about medals. It's about standing up when it matters, even when you're afraid. That evening, they walked along the shore. The weight of his words settled over them with the setting sun. James told her he shared her story because it was important, because she was important. Sarah leaned into him. She hadn't felt brave. She had been terrified. But James reminded her, bravery is acting despite that fear. In the quiet crash of the waves, Sarah found the words. "I love you," she said. The truth was finally out. James turned to her, his eyes soft with a rare vulnerability. "I love you too, Sarah. I have for a while." Returning home, Sarah had 1 semester left. She was ready. She applied to St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The interview was more than a technical check. They wanted someone who truly cared, someone who had survived. Deborah, the manager, was impressed. She saw Sarah's passion. 2 weeks later, the offer arrived. James had news too, a permanent position with the Navy's training command. He was settling down. He was building a life. He was building it with her. Roots were finally starting to take hold. In May, Sarah graduated with honors. A year and a half after the wreckage, she was standing tall. Her brother Marcus told her she was tougher than any Marine he knew. She had handled the trial. She had healed. She started at St. Mary's. The work was demanding, but she was a natural. The kids loved her. Her confidence grew with every shift. She was making a difference, fulfilling the dream she had always carried. From the wreckage, they had built something beautiful. Sarah Chen was no longer defined by what was done to her.
A year after graduating, Sarah received an unexpected apology letter from Derek Thompson. Her hands shook as she opened it. Part of her was angry, part skeptical. But Sarah sat with the acknowledgement for a long time before deciding to move forward. She wrote back, "What you did changed my life, but it didn't destroy me." She sent it and finally let it go. That spring, James took Sarah back to Joe's Diner. It was renovated now, different, just like she was. In the place where her worst night happened, James asked her to start over. "Sarah Elena Martinez, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." A new chapter began right where the old one had shattered. "I wouldn't erase that night," she told James, "because then I wouldn't have everything I have now. I wouldn't be me." James pulled her close. "You took something terrible and transformed it into something beautiful. That's true courage." They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that celebrated second chances and hard-won healing. "You didn't save me that night," Sarah told him. "You gave me the chance to save myself, and you've stood beside me ever since." James spoke of her strength. "You taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just to keep moving forward." Marcus toasted his sister, the warrior. She fought back, she healed, and she found a man who sees her for who she is. 5 years later, Sarah was a senior nurse, mentoring others. James led tactical training for the Navy. They had built a life. They bought a home filled with safety. The nightmares had faded. The trauma was integrated into her story, not defining it. When James's speech on purpose went viral, Sarah chose to share her own story on a podcast to help others heal. "Healing isn't linear," she told the world. "Some days are harder, but every day you keep going is a victory." Thousands downloaded her words. Survivors reached out, inspired by her honesty, to report their own stories or seek help. "Your father would be so proud," James told her. "You've turned your worst moment into a platform for hope." That was her true victory. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just healing, but helping others find their way out of the dark. The men who attacked her thought she was weak. They were wrong. Sarah Martinez was a warrior, a survivor. She had taken the worst night of her life and transformed it, and her story was just beginning.